Чек, 201, 202, 203. Тест, тест. Это русский канал. 201, 202, 203. Если что, это линия, а не микрофон. Раз, 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 два, три. Раз, два, три. Слышно? Что-что? Раз. Да, первый канал. Раз, два, три. Раз, два, три. 243, 244, 245, 246. Есть? Так, а сюда второй. Это от переводчика. Сейчас. А хотя переводчик сейчас выключен, тогда он должен, по идее, дублироваться. Раз, два, три, раз, два, три. То же самое же, по идее, на втором канале. А просто когда переводчик включается, он затихает, и переводчик говорит. Угу.
По-русски так по-русски. Добрый вечер, уважаемые коллеги.
Good evening, dear colleagues. Thank you for coming on this really hard day. We have, as part of our Valdai Discussion Club, we have had a one-day workshop devoted to a variety of issues, not just Russian-Iranian relations, but the global situation, since we felt some time ago this really acute demand of a dialogue with our Iranian colleagues, and fortunately it coincided with the interests of our Iranian friends, the ambassador of Iran to the Russian Federation, Mr. Sanai, a friend and participant in the Valdai Club, a veteran from the very first days of when the club existed. Even before he was the ambassador, he was just a professor, university professor, who could have thought back then the height he was going to reach. And thanks to the help and support from the embassy and the interest from the Institute of Political Studies in Tehran, headed by our guest, Ambassador Sajapur, a well-known diplomat, an expert, a scholar, we organized this event. I'm not going to tell you too much about him. About that event, I mean that it was very sincere, and we were shocked by the level of sincerity, but it was also a secret. But we cannot make it public, thank God. And Mr. Sajapur is kind enough to take your questions. He's going to present the Iranian view on anything, but he has to leave for the airport in 30 minutes. So we will start with Mr. Sajapur, and Mr. Sanai will continue later.
I would like to welcome all of you and to thank our good friend Dr. Lukyanov and his team at Valdai. I think it was a wonderful day. It was very educative, and it opened new spaces in our bilateral relationship in discussing the conceptual, intellectual, practical, and operational side of issues related to global politics, regional politics, and of course bilateral. And I was impressed by the depth of analysis. And actually, in the beginning, I said we have three goals. First, to exchange analysis and views. Second, to build human networks of experts. And finally, the third, to open up more space for bilateral relationship. I'm happy to report to you that we achieved all these goals. And I appreciate and I hope we'll continue it, and we look forward to having it in Tehran as soon as possible. Thank you.
Прошу. Floor is open.
Это Mr. Sajapur, please comment on today's news that President Trump ordered to check the nuclear deal with Iran, whether it complies with the national interests of the US, what consequences it might have for the nuclear deal and for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Can it in any way impact the domestic situation in Iran, considering the upcoming elections? I would be thankful to Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Sanai, to also take this as well.
I cannot comment on what Trump has started because he had made these pronouncements before. What I can tell that JCPOA is an international arrangement, and it is within the framework of international law, and it is based on interaction of different players, including Russia. So it's not a let's say one actor base frame, and I think it's also interesting to note that it is finally finalized by a UN Security Council. So it is not an issue which can be reopened, renegotiated, and so on and so forth. So the issue is that it is an agreed frame with a special arrangements, and I think this type of studies whatever cannot change the nature of this agreement.
Мигди, может быть, добавишь? Окей. Так, пожалуйста, дальше.
Hi, my name. I was wondering. I'll speak in English if it's okay. But I was wondering. There's been a lot of. There have been reports about Trump trying to split the partnership between Iran and Russia, and I was wondering if you could comment on that. Do you feel any pressure, from that side? And in your discussions with Russian counterparts and Russian authorities, how do they respond to that? And have they given you any assurances that such a thing is not going to happen? Thank you.
I think you take whatever Trump has said so seriously. But based on what he has done during the last 3 months, you see that he is not as successful in delivering what he has been promised to American people. I don't want to get to the content, but I want to advise you that be careful whatever he says. It doesn't mean it is materialized immediately. Furthermore, on Iranian-Russian relationship, I think it's a solid relationship, and I think this solidarity and this sense of relationship which is right now multidimensional. It is deep. It is not just based on one single factor. It's not one single factor analysis, if you want to use this phrase. And look at even on the economic side, it is becoming diversified. So I think taking all this to account, I think it's not going to be fluctuating based on the pronouncements of the others, and I think it is an overgrowing relationship also. And my personal view is that it's good not just for Iran and Russia, it's good for the region and for the world.
I'm sorry, if I could just follow up and ask, have there been any assurances from the Russian side, or have your Russian counterparts responded to? I know that there's been some worries on the Iranian side about that.
It's based. The question is based on an assumption that we are worried on this, these words. But I think, as I said, it is a solid relationship, and it goes beyond this type of announcements.
If I may add just one sentence, yes, Mr. Trump did say that he would like to separate Russia and Iran, but based on actions afterwards, he chose the exactly opposite way to do it. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. Пожалуйста, еще вопросы?
Igor Krochkov from one of the Russian electronic newspapers to follow up on the American topic. Today, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, declared that UN follows the rules and conditions of the nuclear deal. There's this bifurcation point in the US. It's unclear for now which way the ball is going to go, which position Trump will take, because he made some claims about Iran. Iran also issued some set of sanctions against the US. If suddenly, unpredictably, as he usually does, he makes a decision to take some positive steps about Iran, will Iran abandon those sanctions, or will those sanctions become a subject of discussion in today's Iran?
So your question is hypothetical. It depends on what situation happens. We cannot judge and we cannot respond. Let's see what happens. And I think furthermore, you have mistaken me with the American spokesman. They make different contradictory statements. They have to explain. But I think on the Iranian side, as I said, we abide by our commitments, and it's not based on the interests of the other, it's based on the interests of our country. But what happens in the future, I think, then we decide.
But, I'm sorry, but what about the sanctions?
Which sanctions?
It was some sort of blacklist of American companies.
As I said, it depends on, it was decided on a specific condition. So any change this also depends on the specific conditions.
Unfortunately, the international situation is pretty asymmetric, and for obvious reasons, United States has a bigger scope of instruments to hurt other countries than vice versa. But Russia also introduces sanctions against the United States, but less efficient, unfortunately.
But can I follow up on the conceptual side that you raised? You know, as a student of international politics, and following the American politics, I think American foreign policy is becoming so addicted to sanctions. And it seems that whatever happens, along with taking position, as usually the spokesmen or women of different agencies take, there should be a sanction component. And I think this addiction is negatively impacting the, let's say, the international interaction.
Можно немножко
Let's step aside from the US and discuss a more narrow issue. What is your assessment of cooperation between Russia and Iran in the energy sector? And perhaps Mr. Ambassador could say something as well. Recently, these connections became stronger, but we saw no specific arrangements. Will Iran give any preferences to Russian companies in the oil and gas sector? And how successful that cooperation is?
Your guess is right. This is the question that the ambassador can answer much better.
Во-первых, я очень рад.
First of all, I am really glad that this was this first meeting of this Iranian Valdai meeting. I'm really glad that this meeting happened today, and I hope that Valdai and IPIS will take efforts to continue this dialogue. And it's very important because, as I said today, the dialogue of elites and intellectuals is an important contribution to Russian-Iranian relations when they are growing so intensively. To answer your question and other questions, somebody said that one of the typical features of our relations right now is that the negative role of a third party diminishes, is decreasing. That is something that President Putin and President Rouhani noted, even though third parties have their own preferences about Russian-Iranian relations. They are defined by the leaders of Iran and Russia, their presidents. I remember very well how after an arrangement was made on the nuclear program of it was stated that the influence of a third factor is diminishing. You should not always link Russian-Iranian relations with something else. These are two strong and serious countries, Iran for the region and Russia for the world, and they are to decide how their relations are going to develop. And it's up to them. They are actors, and but of course it's also about cooperation with the international community and other countries, that's for sure. As for the energy sector, in the energy sector, this is where it's growing. But more specifically, what we have, in 2016, we started the construction of the Bushehr 2 nuclear power plant, and there are plans to continue with Bushehr 3, as well as the construction of 4 thermal power plants in Bandarbas. Work started in December. About synchronization of electricity networks between Iran, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, like triangle-based arrangements. Of course, we do have some agreements that need to be implemented in the oil and gas sector. Major Russian companies, oil and gas companies, sign some MUs, memorandums of understanding. I am optimistic about it, and Russian companies are serious about it. They are studying some license areas, and the Iranian side welcomes the presence of Russian companies. This cooperation in the energy sector is very serious, and our cooperation in this area is developing. Alexei Kupryanov, Lenta.ru. My question is to Mr. Sanai, but perhaps to Mr. Sajapur as well. They're discussing this transportation corridor, north-south, through the territory of Iran. What is the stage of that project right now? Is Iran interested in that politically? And 3, can it cope with it economically? Can transportation infrastructure of Iran cope with the transfer of goods from north to south and back?
Нет, про коридора севера-юга, как я понял. Я думаю, что вы обращаетесь к доктору Саджату.
I think Dr. Sajapur knows better. This project has been there for a long time as a project. We're all to blame that it was not implemented fully. It's a big and strategic project for Iran and Russia and other countries in the region. It's actually closer to implementation than ever before, because it started, the discussions about it started from 2001. It's actually closer to implementation right now. There's common understanding between Iran and Russia. There are arrangements between Iran, Russia, and Azerbaijan. There are some serious intentions on behalf of India that is interested. Some first shipment already happened through this north-south by sea to Bandarabas, then to Resht, by trucks to the border with Azerbaijan, and then by train. There's a small section from Rashta to Astari in Iran, and I hope within a maximum of 2 years this will be finished as well. It's of course very good for Russia, Iran, and India, because the distances from India to St. Petersburg and to Russia is cut by half. So there are many good benefits from this route for both all countries involved. Let's see if we have any more questions. Well, if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you.